How's it going, guys?
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, we're live.
Good morning.
We're here.
Yeah.
Sort of here. We're all in, sort of in one room, kind of nuts. But yeah, it's Sunday, March 13th. We're all a little bleary-eyed, just realizing it was daylight savings a little while ago.
Yeah.
Get organized. So yeah, what a mess. Too bad the vote in the fall was not the right. Wasn't right.
Yeah, what was that? What was that vote for? It was to stay on daylight savings time.
It was to stay on daylight savings instead of staying on standard.
Oh my God, standard would have been so much better.
I think standard would have been great. Yeah. Like we're on standard now, right? Is that not
We just switched to daylight savings, I think.
okay.
Yeah. So the vote was to stay on this time permanently.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what if we just agreed to stay in this and attack with the rest of the world?
Yeah, I guess
We might miss a few
perpetuate
appointments.
The realtors are always late.
Would we be always late or we'd be always ahead?
We would always be late.
They'll have to work.
Well, I don't know. We had a couple topics we wanted to maybe throw out. So maybe the first one that we just started talking about was investment condos right now. Might be the best time to buy we've seen in a very long time. And you know what? Why wouldn't you aim to pick something up right now? What would be any reason not to? Because prices are kind of historically low for condos. People still selling today are taking an enormous bath on their original purchase price, even from 2009 through 15.
Okay, well, I'll volunteer to take up to take the other side of that argument. So I'll pretend that I'm opposed to buying condos, and what are the reasons why I wouldn't? I guess there's a couple of kind of large-scale factors that are playing into it. One of them is that that CMHC is, for the last probably about 10 years, has been lending money to purpose-built rentals for the purpose of just renting them at very low rates, like sub 1%. So hence you've seen projects that were built initially or proposed initially for resale were converted to rentals, and then a lot of them were just purpose-built rentals, and they intend to put them on the market if the market ever comes back to the point where they can get that return. So there's, as a result of that, so you've got a whole slug of pension funds that have these low, fairly reasonable return on these rentals, but the returns, like they're getting probably a 4 cap on them with an interest rate of like a sub 1, so they're still making a reasonable 3% cap rate on them, and they can do that. Whereas a typical, like I couldn't compete with that, you couldn't compete with that 3%, because inflation, for example, this year was like close to 5%, real inflation. So why would I buy a condo and compete with the big guys at 3% cap? That's one reason. Anybody want to counter that?
It seems like the market's there. I mean, there's still lots of people renting. I mean, vacancy seems to be very low on the rental side, and people are getting lined up the door for rentals. So, if there's a lot of rentals out there, it seems like there's still a lot of people looking to rent as tenants, and so that could be the counter argument. That there's still enough
Demand.
Demand for rentals.
Demand for rentals.
Yeah.
That if you're not buying, you're just missing out on that demand.
Mm-hmm. Are we going to see though? Like, I know, so there's high demand of real estate purchases, as well as the rental market is strong. With rents going up and whatnot. Are we in this market condition? Are we going to see though places like Trinity Hills and other new builds start flipping the units that they've got designated as rentals to selling them to purchase
Okay, well, you just bolstered my next argument, and that is that there's a shadow inventory, Michael, of, I believe there's a shadow inventory of product. So, in any supply and demand equation, you look at the market, and the market's, why would the market go up? It only goes up when the demand exceeds the supply, and then those factors come into play. So when you have this shadow inventory of purpose-built rentals that are sitting there that could come on the market for sale at any given time. I don't know if anyone can calculate that, the amount or number of condos that are kind of sitting in that shadow inventory.
Yeah.
If the market starts to go up, then that could bleed into the market, and then you would have again like a lot of supply, or you don't have, for sure, you don't have a finite supply that you can kind of rely on right now, or calculate even.
Yeah.
So thank you for making that.
But and I wonder, has that started to actually materialize? Because what I'm seeing is like condos are starting to move. Like it's interesting. It's not obviously not as brisk as the detached market, and so are we seeing evidence of that actually occurring? Anyone?
I don't know if we're seeing evidence of those markets, those rental units being flipped into the market yet. I think that if anyone is doing so, it's maybe the private investor, the man or woman who had a condo before they got married, kept it when they moved into their place, and have hung on to it because they couldn't sell it at a level that was considered acceptable. So I think those are maybe the units that are getting flipped back in right now. But outside of that, I don't think that shadow inventory that Sam was talking about has arrived yet.
Yeah, I think that there's a bit of the shadow inventory coming myself. I think that for new builds, I think there are some new builds, for example, in let's go down south, Wolfville, a bunch of apartment buildings going into Wolfville, Silverado, all down in the suburbs, new builds that were, in my estimation, they're coming on market now, but they were planned in a worse market, and so they were probably planned to be purpose-built rentals. Right now, they're being sold as guaranteed rentals to the market. I've seen some buildings that are exclusively being marketed outside of Calgary to Toronto or Ontario and BC. You can't even find information on the builders here. They're exclusively being marketed through other marketing companies to be sold as guaranteed rentals. So it seems like this is kind of a half step to unloading some of that shadow inventory stuff that they planned to build and rent, and now they're still they're being marketed as strictly as rentals, but to investors.
Mm-hmm. One of you a couple days ago mentioned that in Vancouver there's a radio station that is broadcasting new listings in Calgary. So they're broadcasting a radio feed to the Vancouver market, just talking about new listings in Calgary. Dan, that was you, right?
That's right. Yeah, I heard that from one of the other agents at a radio broker, and he said, yeah, it's a 24/7 radio station in Vancouver where they have a listing feed that pops up their email and they go, okay, we got a new listing here. Stay tuned this morning, and it's coming on at 5:59, and your listing agent is so and so, and here's his phone number. Give him a call.
That's crazy.
That's interesting. So that, I mean, think of the context of that, where you take, let me say, first of all, real estate is local. And so when you take that out of context, when your paradigm is a hot market, and when a new listing comes up, you got to grab it. And when a new condo build comes up, you grab it, you sit on it for 2 years because the market historically goes like that. And you just wait and you make money on it. And you transplant the Calgary market, which I would say hasn't yet done that, or it's done in the past, but not now. Something I know. Then it's really out of context, isn't it? And so they've kind of run out of product in Toronto, Vancouver, and it appears that they're being seduced by inventory that's available in Calgary. And they got money to spend. So
yeah,
how is that affecting the market? That's an interesting one. And I know we're getting a lot of Toronto and Vancouver buyers.
Also, I'm buying an investment condo.
Well, there are some other factors, like, so what we always talk about, so I'm gonna argue on the other side, because what we always talk about is you really can't predict the market. And I would say, like, if the market isn't hot yet, like the time to buy into the condo market isn't when it's hot, it's when it's at, it's when it's at the bottom, and when everybody's going that way, you might want to go that way. So that's not a bad scenario to get into, and then you look like a genius. And the other factor is that we always look at markets. I mean, I've been through, and you guys have been through a few, but I've been through more ups and downs in these markets, and you kind of get a feel for them. And I would have to say that right now we're at the bottom of the market, and it's going up. There's no question it's going up. So it is a good time to get into it. But the thing that always affects markets that you can predict unfailingly is demographics, and what's happening to our demographics. We're all getting older. Of course, you guys aren't, but I am. Many others are. And as we get older, we have a change in lifestyle, and that change in lifestyle predicates usually a move to a condominium from a single family home. So we have that feeding into the market that is certain to affect the market and you can't, that's predictable. So I just bolstered your argument.
Yeah, and the other thing that dovetails into demographics is migration. Right? And, we're predicted to have significant migration to Canada and Calgary in coming years. What's happening worldwide is pushing people out of other countries, and I expect we're going to see some influx from that as well. So. Yeah,
and I'm going to add one other thing if I can. Nobody else has another factor, is that you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, and that is the World Economic Forum is that is a real thing that's happening in the U.S. where BlackRock and some of these large funds are buying not only condominiums, but they're buying large tracts of subdivisions, and that is affecting the supply demand in the U.S. to the point where I'm hearing they can't get product because these guys come in and they buy a swath of homes. They just pay the price, and of course, as I talked about before, they can accept a much lower return and survive, whereas we can't. So, pardon me, that's feeding into the market, and that you could expect that might happen up here in Canada eventually. I'm not seeing it right now, but it could happen eventually.
Yeah. Are we also still seeing? I guess I would assume that we're still seeing, with China's kind of clamp down on Hong Kong. And I would say we're still seeing a lot of fleeing capital from Hong Kong into the West Coast, whether it's in the West Coast of the US or the West Coast of Canada, and probably into Toronto. So is that's still a big factor? That's kind of like at play, right?
I think so. Yeah. I was just talking to an agent overnight who's got money getting wired to Calgary from China. Buyers coming directly to our market. So I think so. Yeah. It seems to be. I would say 2 years ago we heard a lot more about that market, and I think it's being overshadowed by the other national markets here in Canada. The Vancouver buyers, the Toronto buyers.
Yeah.
So that's still a factor.
So we've got a few other topics that we wanted to discuss today, potentially, and so I'm gonna throw a couple others out here. So will the significant rise in gas prices, which seem like they're just going to continue going up this year, is that going to affect the real estate market, and how? Or is that offset by kind of the last 2 years, the influx of work from home, working, like the change in how we're actually using the office? So please, someone,
Good question.
Answer this, address this.
Yeah, I think that the gas price, it's going to people are going to in the short term probably be very conscious of it. I think the long term it's not going to change much.
Yeah.
is my suspicion. I think from now till June, we'll probably see a lot of grumbling about it. I think once summer comes, people will resume their, they'll start filling up their trucks, start filling up their RVs, and it's going to feel like nothing happened, except we're just going to hear a lot more about it. But I don't think it's really going to hurt any significant driving. It's not going to significantly change.
Well, it's going to just as an aside, it's going to change my our plans a little bit. We last year we bought a 1987 27-foot Winnebago, and you need
That's good on gas.
yeah, you need it's got a 454 1972 Corvette engine in it, and you can hear it from down the block. It's a pretty sweet vehicle, to be honest, but it takes like 3 mortgage payments to get from here to the interior BC. So I think that my wife Claire and I were kind of reconfiguring our summer plans a little bit.
You use it as a plan.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe like a mobile Airbnb, or a stationary Airbnb. Anyway, sorry. So just coming back to gas prices and how that might affect the market in relation to kind of work from home. So again,
the news this morning is that prices are coming back down a little bit, but I haven't seen it. I don't know. To me, the gas price, it's one of those things that it seems like a very what's the right term? Very capital, like when the oil price is going up by a couple pennies a barrel, gas price at the pump is going up by nickels or dimes, and there doesn't seem to be any correlation with. I don't know. It just seems like profiteering. But I don't know. I'm not in that industry.
yeah,
Well, I think you're right, but I guess the question is, we won't predict where oil prices will go. But since they are at the level that they're at right now and predicted to maintain relatively high, I think that bodes pretty well for the Calgary market.
Yeah.
So that bodes well for the Calgary real estate market, and nobody's talked about that because they're almost afraid to, because I think they feel like they're gonna jinx it. But I know that. Well, I feel that we will start to see, a lot of these oil companies start to rake in some good profits, and that will bleed down into the Calgary economy, possibly in the higher end.
Yeah.
And so,
does the rise in oil and gas prices, so like a barrel of oil and the price of natural gas, both of them are rising, and natural gas has doubled since last year. Or more than doubled, I believe. And oil prices have, I think they've risen by like 60-70%, and they're probably going to go further. Does that kind of increase the probability of rate increases? And is that in the Calgary market, are those two factors, do they offset each other, or is one stronger than the other?
I think we're almost going to see rate increases, just to put that up there. Like that, with inflation where it's at.
Yeah. So
not only gas, I think the conversation is too narrow. We're talking about gas, but everything is going up.
Yeah. So,
peanut butter is going to go up.
Yeah, that is a travesty.
Vegetables.
Does your Winnebago run on?
Basically, I run on peanut butter, actually.
Yeah. So I think how are increased how is inflation? I think maybe the question is, how is inflation going to affect buying trends?
Yeah.
And that could be, so are people to be moving out to the country, as we've seen a kind of a fleeing to, if you own a condo, you're buying a townhome. If you own a townhome, you buy a home, single family.
Yeah.
If you have a single family, you're moving out to the country.
Yeah.
Will that change with rising commodity prices? What do you guys think?
Michael?
I am not sure that it will. I think the people that are moving, that are decentralizing and moving away from the city of Calgary, out to some land, even if it's just 2 or 4 acres, they're probably the people that have the means to deal with the gas price increase or just the additional transportation costs in general. And I think they also are typically the type of worker that they are, like as a white collar worker in an office, they have the flexibility in their workspace to also manage that and not have to drive in as often or be in the office as often, and can do remote meetings or work from home. So I think that will still be a thing, is that decentralization and moving away from the suburbs, that the people that still want to be in an urban setting will continue to be, and this might be a good incentive for them to get on their bike or move a little closer, but I don't think it's going to necessarily dramatically shift the way we've seen people moving in the last 2 years or so.
Yeah.
So the future is all the offices downtown are being converted to greenhouses and vertical farms,
Maybe.
and people will be working from home in rural Alberta.
To that point, I did see there is a microgreens shop in the plus 15s of the core building. So there, like where there used to be a men's shop, is now looks like a hydroponic microgreens operation.
Crazy, like production.
The height of absurdity. I can't understand, as you said, Sano, why you'd flip that production location, but I guess it's happening.
Well, we might have predicted that a few years ago.
How about I mean, like from the standpoint of work from home, so whether it's I guess the work from home trend has, you've touched on it, like where people are now like, okay, we can now do my job from Carstairs or Canmore or Kelowna or whatever, and not really having to commute much. Is that this is going to be a fixture for quite a while? Wouldn't you guys say?
I think so. I was talking to somebody last night who said, on a teacher's salary, who they haven't seen raises in a decade. So their effective take-home income has been reduced by 20% just for inflation over the last decade.
Yeah.
And they said, why don't we just sell and move to a remote town? I get paid the same to work in Crossfield.
Yeah.
But the housing cost is about half. And we don't need to be a 2-income household anymore. We can be a 1-income household.
Yeah.
And just have a better lifestyle.
And I think to dovetail into that point, that part of what's been behind that that move has been not only work at home, but school at home.
Yeah.
A lot of people are moving to larger homes because they had now to school at home. They want, their kids they need more facilities for that.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting to see. I think that there's some. I think you're seeing like the pendulum swing towards employees and workers having more control and autonomy over the work conditions that they have. And I mean, and that doesn't, I guess, apply to all jobs, but a lot of white collar jobs. And I think it'll settle in for the better for the future. I think, to be quite honest, to have like more variety and perhaps less commuting. I mean, in Calgary, the roads are not as absolutely jam packed at rush hours, in the morning and in the evening. Anyways, just some of my observations.
And you were mentioning your Airbnb. That just to circle back on the previous conversation, I think that's another factor that lends into the condo market. So an investment in a condo, if you could Airbnb it, would that kind of gets you out of that paradigm or the competition of the regular rentals and puts you in a whole other different bracket.
Yeah.
So that could be, right now, if you could find a good deal on a condo and you could Airbnb it, then you might find yourself a pretty good investment.
Yeah. It's good. I like it.
Okay, I want to switch topics here, and maybe we're getting close to the end of our time here. So I thought maybe let's go around the screen, around the table, around the room, and what is one exception to the rule that we seem to think that there are some hard and fast rules in real estate, or just maybe with any aspect of it. I don't know. Maybe and I'll go first here, but one one exception to any rule. So think on that. But
Okay.
so this weekend I had a couple of interesting calls where both on both the selling and buying side that we thought there was a deal done, and there was verbal communication that we have an accepted deal. It's signed. I'm just driving back to scan it and send it to you. And in between that, the time where that phone call was made
Oh my God.
and getting back to an office, another offer came in. And so here we think the rule is I tell you there's a done deal. There's another offer that comes in. As a listing agent, we have a fiduciary duty to present all offers, regardless of when they come in.
Yeah.
And so on the listing side, you have to present that offer. And in that case, it meant a very unpleasant phone call to the person that thought they had an accepted offer.
Yeah.
And then on the buying side, it's the same thing. You get that nasty phone call saying, "Yeah, I told you we had a deal 10 minutes ago, but things have changed." So just to illustrate, we always think that there's rules around the stuff, but it's really just at the end of the day, we're kind of dealing with people, and there's not until you have a signed contract in your hands. Still,
That's what I was going to say. Is maybe that's the rule, is that there's not an exception to, unless you have the signed contract in your hands, you don't have a deal.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anybody else real quick have a story?
I think, okay, I'll go this weekend as well. An unconditional offer came in, and a conditional offer came in, and you'd think that the unconditional offer was better than the conditional offer, but at the end of the day, the unconditional offer that we were working with, it fell through. And it fell through for a variety of reasons that were not related to price. It was
Personality?
it was related to personality of the agent, of the counterpart that I was working with. And what we thought was, this is a pretty straightforward situation. They couldn't handle. Anyways, it was such a frustrating thing on Friday nights. And so I had to I spent about 4 hours on trying to seal this unconditional deal. And because the personality that I was working with was, it was like kind of abrasive, like a cactus, and unwilling to sort of essentially close the deal with like kind of the details that were required for this specific situation. It turned into a situation where they just refused to close the deal. And so we wasted about 4 hours on that. And so we're now back to square one. So, I guess just an unconditional deal is, until it's signed, until it's like accepted and perfect, I suppose, you can't count that as like a signed, sealed, and certified deal.
Interesting. Yeah. Michael, you got any?
Maybe not a hard and fast rule, but maybe something that is surprising in the current market is that cash is not always king. We've seen a few deals and written a few deals in the last little while where it hasn't always gone to the highest offer. Sometimes it is, as Michael was saying, sometimes to our folly, an unconditional offer at a lower price. But sometimes as well, sort of surprisingly, is that a well-written letter. Or Dan, I heard you telling a story about an agent who had submitted a client video, or the agent themselves submitted the video. But I guess all that to say is that it is not always the most money, or it's not always cash is king. Sometimes there are opportunities still, or ways to get a deal where it's not just the most money.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's a good point. And I think we talked about this last time, where when you're presenting offers, sometimes you can write a story, or like there's personality. When people are selling a house that they've raised their kids in, there's more to it than just the dollar amount. And we've won many deals by expressing or showing that there's a wonderful family that's going to move into it and enjoy it, enjoy all of the love that they put into this house, will be translated and transferred to this next family. That's an important point that could win you. But I want to say that where there's no rules is, or what I often use is just in intuition. And I honestly, I think the longer I get in the tooth, the more I learn that, intuition is as valid as any of the statistics and data and rules that we go by every day. And the more you learn to trust that when you're dealing with real estate and deals and people, it serves you well. Of course, you have to tune your intuition, but you can't just run. You can't fly blindly, but
yeah, that's good.
That's what I got.
Good thought. Any other things that we want to touch on before we wrap it up?
Good question.
It's an awesome time to list your house.
Yeah,
it is. That's maybe not to be walked over. Just about everything we're listing is 7 days. Not just us, but across the market. But it's wild out there right now.
On that note, actually, I don't mean to open up another sort of big discussion, but a lot of clients out there, a lot of prospective clients out there are, they say that their house in whatever Douglasdale or wherever it's was worth $570 last year. They're speculating that they would be able to get 700, and so they're really pushing us hard to list it at 700 or something. Whereas our advice is to say, hold on. The fundamentals, the evidence still says that it's probably 620 now or 630 now. But let's market it the hell out of it, and then let's see what the market, how it reacts. And you'll likely have a higher probability of getting to 700. So that's what we've been telling our clients. So I just want to throw that out there. How should we handle these types of conversations?
I think that's the way you framed it is great. I think that maybe we come back to the price of oil discussion. If you're a producer and you think oil is going to 120, you don't price it at 120 today, expecting it'll get there. You hope to sell it today, anyways, right? I mean, you price it at the market and it'll trade. So, it's a similar thing. I mean, we have to look at what's trading today, and we have the opportunity to try and project forward and say, yeah, you might be there.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that if you're as careful as you can be and really focus your strategy around the price that the comparables are telling you is the price, rather than what you hope is the price, then that's probably your best way to be successful in the sale, I would say.
If there is an opportunity to point to a home that's been on the market for more than 14 days, that can tell as much a story as the sales as well. If something is on the market at 700 and it's sitting there for more than, if it's lasted a weekend and it hasn't sold right now, that's telling, and that's something worth,
That's an illustrative example. Yeah.
And thank God we changed the pending sale rule so that we can actually have a better view of what's going on in the market right now, because had we not, in a hot market, we hadn't really experienced this kind of a hot market since we changed it, we'd be running blind. Yeah. So that's a really good point.
Like in Sam, that just elaborate on that, like that rule. Just so
the pending sale rule was that we didn't have to report it pending. So if you had, let's say there's 5 houses on the market at 500,000, they're all bungalows on 50-foot lots.
Yeah.
And you look and you are listing a 50-foot lot with the bungalow.
Yeah.
And you look at there's 5 of them and they weren't reported pending.
Yeah.
You would put your property on at maybe 490, but certainly probably not much more than 500.
Yeah.
But if over the weekend 4 of them sold.
Yep.
and there was no, or there was, let's say there was no competition, you put your house on at 510,
Yeah.
520 or something like that. So it makes $20,000 difference in the, you know, price of the house just by knowing, just by having accurate, up to the date information.
Yep.
So that's what we're talking about, pending sale rule, and we're I'm proud to say that we changed that at the real estate council and area. We'll give them credit as well, and Pillar 9, all the players for changing that rule.
Yeah.
And I just want to make a point about, you know, market the price. Like when the difference between the appraisal, any assessment, and us and a good realtor doing the market evaluation is that you're looking in the rearview mirror, you look at everything sold in the past 6 months, 90 days, whatever the period is,
Yeah.
depending on the speed of the market, to evaluate what the price is today. But actually, you're not going to sell it today. You're going to sell it. It's going to go on the market in 2 weeks, in a month, what have you. So a good realtor has to have that intuition, foresight, and feel for the market to say we can list it 10 grand higher, 20 grand higher, whatever. But also, the seller has to be, I guess, astute enough to listen to the market, and the realtor to listen to the market when they put it on. So you put it on higher.
Yeah.
You've got to listen to the market, because ultimately,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what I say or what the seller says or what you say. The market is going to, is king.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have clients who don't listen and they're stubborn, and then what happens? You get less than you could have gotten ultimately by not listening to the market. Anyone going to comment on that?
Yeah, I think I think this is such an important discussion to state that, like exactly what you said, to our sellers, when we're specifically working with this or that seller, when we're pricing, like, there is a margin of like getting over your skis that you can kind of do, I would say, but essentially, they've got to sort of, whether they're working with us or another team or another group, they've got to assume and trust that team or group or us are going to market it as strongly and creatively as possible, get it seen by as many eyeballs as possible, and that our objective is to get as much value out of that transaction for them as possible. But it's very difficult for us to say, yeah, no, we will sell it for X, like for 30% above that less price. It is very hard, and I just think it's part of our fiduciary responsibility to kind of dial it back and say, look, we still have to approach this in a conservative way. And so, I think in some cases we lose listing opportunities because we want to really, our reputations are so valuable, and we don't want to put a stamp on just a speculative kind of shoot for the stars price, just to almost stroke the ego of the sellers, and sort of check that speculative box, I guess.
That's a topic for perhaps our next call, but there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank everyone who's dialing in. If you guys have any comments about like what we're doing, don't hesitate to send it to us, because this is still new territory for us to have a live stream. The purpose of this is to just touch on a few important topics that that we find interesting, that we're dealing with, and that you all might find interesting. And so don't hesitate to give us feedback. Send us questions. Also, if we're doing things wrong, if we're touching on things that just aren't meaningful to you, also give us some negative feedback too. But we're wanting to add value to your Sunday morning. And yeah, we'd love to have that feedback so we can provide more value to you. Anyways, thanks everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
All right.
Have a great Sunday.
Take care, guys.
Have a good morning. See ya.